Explore the history, relationships, expertise, and data that go into ensuring Stine growers get maximum yield potential. This is the Stine Seedcast. Here's your host, David Thompson.
Hello, and welcome to the Stine Seedcast. I'm your host, David Thompson, National Marketing and Sales Director for Stine Seed Company. We've got another great episode lined up with special guests, expert insights, and discussion on everything you need to know about maximizing yield potential. On today's episode, our very special guest is Myron Stine, President of Stine Seed Company. Welcome to the show, Myron.
Hello, David.
So today we're going to be continuing our Yield Plus Corn Tour. Myron has been visiting with some truly innovative corn growers all around the Corn Belt. And he's been talking with these growers about their experience with Stine's Yield Plus advantage in their use of Stine corn hybrids and how adopting super management strategies can help achieve top-end yield results. So Myron, in today's episode, who are we going to be hearing from?
Yeah, today, David, we're talking to Daron Judd. Daron Judd's in north central Illinois, and he uses 105 to 115-day corn hybrids. He's a very good example of somebody that, should I say, he's like the poster child of somebody that's doing high population corn, high management corn. He's pushing the limits. He's been working with us now, I think, since 2017, and has a lot of experience and has done a number of different changes on his farm to accommodate what you have to do for super management of Stine corn.
Well, let's have a listen to the interview and then stick around after for a conversation with Myron.
Okay, welcome to another session of the Stine Yield Plus Corn Tour. Today we're with Daron Judd of Lostant, Illinois, which is north central Illinois. Today we're going to talk about Daron's family farm and how they got established here in north central Illinois, and then we're going to talk about the Stine hybrids they're using on this farm and how they manage those Stine hybrids. They're in narrow rows, and it's definitely a situation where it's super management of the corn crop. So Daron, tell me some about the family farm, how you got established here.
Yep, Grandpa started farming in 1949. 160 acres was all. So had that ground, and then he also was helped a neighbor, was a hired man for one of the neighbors as well. Mm-hmm. That neighbor decided that he wanted to retire, and Grandpa then picked up, some more ground, and he actually farmed all that ground till 1970, where he unexpectedly passed away at a pretty young age, which then in turn my dad
threw your dad into the
absolutely at a very young age as well. Yeah, so Dad started farming in 1970. I was fortunate enough to pick up some ground in 2000. So Dad and I farmed together for about 6 years. At that point, Dad decided that he wanted to start enjoying retirement. He retired then at 2006, and he still helps out. Helps in the spring and the fall. So always good to have his knowledge.
His knowledge and his help.
Absolutely.
That's the time you need extra help.
You bet, absolutely. So that's kind of how we got started here in central Illinois.
So on your farm, you are narrow rows. Mm-hmm. I believe this season you'll be all corn. So some years you're all soybeans, mm-hmm. Some years are all corn. Mm-hmm. Some years you're corn on corn.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the longest you've gone corn on corn?
We did go 6 years one time.
Okay.
And it worked out pretty good, but I don't think we'd ever go more than that. I think 6 years is about the most that we'd want to do. So I'd say 4 to 5 at the most. That's kind of where we're at. Yeah.
In that year you put soybeans on the ground, you typically have some phenomenal soybean yields, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you manage your corn hybrids on your farm. And it all starts with the yield goal. Mm-hmm. So tell us what is your yield? What's your objective on your corn crop?
300.
300.
I mean, with the things that we're doing, that you guys have helped us do and with the varieties that you guys have provided us, 300 is where we want to be at.
So you want a consistent 300 across the whole farm. So
Absolutely.
Which is really, really cool. So
yeah.
Tell us on row width now. So you've been in the twin 20 arena some, and prior to that, what were you? Were you 20 inch?
No, we were actually 30s. Looking back in history, there's obviously a direct correlation between population and yield. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've all seen this. So, my grandpa, for instance, he was 38 inch. Then Dad was 36. Then we went to 30s, twin 20s, and now 15s. We were at 15s, which we were very, very happy with. We were happy with the twin 20s, but the 15s are working out very well for us.
Yeah.
We're pushing that population, under your recommendations, we're right around 44,000 is what we've kind of felt is a sweet spot. We drop it anywhere from 42 to 52.
Okay.
But, it seems like 44 is what's working out really well for us.
And so you're variable rate at this point?
No, I'm not.
You're not?
No.
So when you're going 52, what makes you go 52?
So it's not like we do a lot of 52. It might only be 2 rounds. But,
okay.
But I want to see, come fall, when we look at them yield maps, I just want something to go by. I want to make sure that we're not leaving something on the table.
Okay.
Excellent. So,
yeah.
And that's why we do that.
Let's talk about fertility.
Okay.
At this point. So what do you do? What's important to you fertility-wise on managing your corn crop?
Fertility-wise, Myron, I think a thing that's worked out really good for us is that we start pulling soil samples every year. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, it has really actually brought our cost per acre in fertilizer down a substantial amount. We take this information every year and along with our yield maps from combining, and we layer that. And it's not so much grids anymore, but we're doing zones.
Okay.
And that is, it seemed to have worked really well for us.
And do you do variable rate planting with those zones? I don't believe you do.
No, we do not. Our ground is pretty consistent around here.
So no real reason to go that direction.
No, it is not.
So let's talk about planting depth. Is planting depths, when you're planting corn, is there anything specific you look at on planting depth that's key?
Yeah, we want to place that right around the 2-inch mark.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody kind of shoots for that, as so do we, and we've had good luck at that. If we go any shallower, it doesn't seem like we have the brace roots that we want, and we don't really want to go much deeper than that either. You guys have obviously shared all your data with us as far as the planting depth that you guys like to see it at, and usually try and get it right at that 2-inch level.
So Daron, let's talk about your planter. So at one time you were twin 20s and now you're 15s.
We were, yep. We were twin 20s for about 4 years. Okay. Worked out very well. We were happy with it. Got us away from the 30-inch rows, which was our main goal. But now that we're in 15s, we are definitely enjoying that much more. It's easier to combine. We've got the head that will handle the 15-inch row now, and it's worked out very well for us. It was kind of a big transition to make. We had that twin 20 48 row planter, and now it's a 15 32 row planter.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. So there was a lot of work involved in that, but we got that behind us last winter, and this was our first year of 15-inch row corn.
Let's talk about the different Stine corn hybrids that you grow here.
Okay.
So tell us your 2 favorite hybrids, and maybe tell us a couple of hybrids you don't like.
Okay.
From that you tried over the years.
Well, as far as the ones that we do like, 9714 comes to mind right away. 107-day, which is, that's about the earliest corn that we plant on the farm. We like to get started with that. That way, come fall, we can get going combine a little bit early, get the combine set, And what we found with 9714, even though it's 107-day corn, we've actually had years, years actual, that it has yielded just as good as our 114-day corn. I mean,
And an incredible thing about that is we used to call it 107 day, but we found out it's more like 105 day.
Really?
So that is cool.
Yeah.
To know
Yeah.
that's doing that on your farm in this geography.
Absolutely. And it seems to handle the high population very well. It's shorter in stature, which we really like. Less biomass, because there are years that we are corn on corn. So that shorter stature corn seems to have less biomass. We get in, we're able to manage the residue easier with your guys' shorter stature corn. And 9714, it just seems to respond well to fungicide, which we're a firm believer in that on the farm. So 9714 is actually definitely one of our favorites, as well as 9808.
Okay.
Everything that I said about 9714 plus the standability of 9808 we have found is just second to none. And the stuff just stands. It's a pleasure to combine, and generally 80% of the time it's our best yielding year in and year out. It's just so 9808. The word comes to mind is consistent.
Okay.
It's just very consistent number for us.
Great. So you talked about the shorter statured hybrids, and it's all about gathering light or light interception. And so it sounds like that's working well on your farm.
It is.
How about fungicide? Now you brought up fungicide, and I know you're doing some pretty cool things with fungicides. So last year you used a drone. I think they had a capacity of 3 gallons?
Yeah, it was 3 gallon. Yeah,
And there's a new one that...
There is. They call it the R30, which just came out not too long ago, which has a capacity of, I believe it's right around 9 gallon now.
Oh.
So we're talking, a lot more acres an hour with that one. So we definitely want to get our hands on that.
Daron, I think the drone technology is something that everybody should probably look at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you.
I'm not sure. I'm sure people probably look at it and go, I don't know. It's too small, and there's not enough quantity being sprayed. But I would tell you, the numbers don't lie, and it's definitely working well.
That's where we were a little leery, as far as the drone's only 2 gallon the acre, and we weren't really sure about that. But we took the time and did a ground rig last year at 15, brought in the plane at 5 and a drone at 2, and the drone at 2 did just as good as the ground rig at 15. So it made a believer out of us.
Because even I go, gosh, you need to have the 15 gallon, you need to have the coverage. That's not the case.
No.
So
our data sure didn't show that.
Yeah, that's cool. Let's talk some about nitrogen application.
Okay.
And what you're doing there specifically, because as we know, nitrogen's really, really important. So nitrogen and sulfur, what's your program with that?
So we pull soil samples, like I said, every year. We put on some sulfur in the fall, with our dry. Then obviously as far as nitrogen goes, we like to wait, if we can, to put on anhydrous in the spring. Some years we have to put it on the fall, just all depends. But we generally like to wait till spring. Start with get some anhydrous down, and then we come back with our application, our herbicide application. And usually we're looking at about 80 units of 32 with our herbicide. We do run some starter on the planter, get a little bit more nitrogen there. We split some fields with flying on the granular urea, and it just didn't show any benefit. And that wasn't cheap to do.
All right. Yeah. So how many total units do you want?
So at the end of the day, we're out there probably 3 different times throughout the year, 3 different applications of nitrogen. So at the end of the day, we'd like to be around 250 is kind of what we shoot for, 250, 260, somewhere in there. I think that's where we need to be to get to the yield goal that we're looking for.
Good. Anything else we need to talk about on how you grow corn here in North Central Illinois? And you have you're having fantastic results, which is exciting for us.
Yeah, we're pretty happy with the results that we're getting with your guys' varieties. it just seems like, back in 17 when we started this relationship with you guys, we were just kind of maxed out on where we're at as far as yield. We were just looking for something different to get us over that next 20, 30, 40, 50 bushel. And we feel that this is it. It's working out very well for us.
So when you look at 9808 and 9714, and next year we'll have the new MX 514, do those hybrids bring anything to your farm that other hybrids cannot bring?
Handling the narrow row configuration and the higher population.
Okay.
We just haven't found any other varieties out there that can handle that high population the way that your guys' can.
Excellent. Yeah, that's what we see with MX 514 or 9714. It definitely loves that population and does very well with it. And same with 9808 too. So.
Yeah.
Well, so that concludes our talk with Daron regarding his management of Stine corn products on his farm. Daron, thank you very much for taking the time to let us come in and talk to you about what you're doing on your farm. It's exciting to hear about that. We wish you the best in this upcoming season, and we look forward to working with you in the coming years. So we want to earn your business every single year, and we hope we're doing that.
Absolutely. Thanks for everything that you've provided us, and it's been a great relationship so far.
Great.
So that was Daron Judd, Lostant, Illinois, visiting with Myron about his use of Stine hybrids and how he maximized yield potential on his farm. So a lot of interesting tidbits of that, Myron. I got a lot of questions I was going to talk to you about. For starters, I know you said Daron's been working with us for several years now.
That's right. Yep.
From my side of things, as I recall, he was one of the early adopters on our planter program. And It occurs to me that probably nobody, I don't think we've talked on the podcast about the planter program. I wondered if you wanted to give a little background of the impetus of that program and how we got to where we are today.
Sure, absolutely. So the Twin 20 planter program was our way of introducing some of the large producers, or should I say some of the aggressive early adopters to high population corn. It was our way of helping that producer get into high population corn, high management corn. And so what we did was we went to growers, and if they committed to X amount of corn for so many years, we provided them a Twin 20 planter. And what that was two rows that were, it was essentially 10-inch spacing after you looked at it. However, it was two rows that were able to be brought in by a 20-inch corn head. So you could plant 10-inch spacing and buy a 20-inch corn head and have ultra narrow row corn. And that enabled people to push their populations to that 40, 50,000 range, and that without having bad, what I would consider bad, without them hurting their equidistant spacing. And so we had, I think we had 50 planters. No, we had 90 planters. We had 90 planters that we sent out there, and Daron was somebody that did that. Since then, a number of people, including ourselves, have moved to 15-inch row spacing. And that's because now there are a number of combine heads on the market that do very, very well with 15-inch row spacing. When we came out with the Twin 20 system, you didn't have that. And because 15-inch rows, frankly, is probably good enough. You don't have to go to 10-inch spacing right now. And so, yeah, Daron did that. Daron got into Twin 20s, and then he was able to get a very, very nice 15-inch row head, and he converted his Twin 20 planter to 15-inch row spacing.
Well, and to me, it's such an innovative program because the way we were putting that together, we're in the business of selling seed, right? And I know when we reach a certain point, we're talking about population. There's only so much you can do with population in a 30-inch row, right?
That's right.
And so at a point, you start getting out of the seed conversation. You get into a real sort of conversation about the practice of farming and row spacing and all of those things. And so I thought it was really innovative that the company went to that route to say, listen, we're putting our money where our mouth is. We're going to give you the opportunity to plant in narrow rows using one of these, narrow row planters. And so just really kind of innovative. And like you said, I think we end up with 90 of those planters out eventually. And I also thought it was interesting, Daron's path followed our path that the Stine farm took. Because again, like you said, it's not that Twin 20s didn't work. It worked quite well. But the reason, like you said, Twin 20s were where we went was because there wasn't a real great 15-inch option at the time when we started. And now that has evolved. And so I think it's 15 is kind of becoming the sweet spot for narrow row production, right?
Yeah, and Daron talked about it. Daron talked about how his grandfather was in 38-inch row spacing. His father was in 36-inch row spacing. Daron went to 30-inch row spacing. And then he knew, okay, it's time for me to move beyond this, because in 30-inch row spacing, your max is about 39,000. And Daron knew I had to have, I need to have more than 39,000 plants out there with these hybrids to maximize their yield potential.
Yeah. One of the things I thought was interesting in Daron's interview was talking about his rotational practice, going, pretty much all corn one year and going all soybeans the next year. I think that's kind of a unique take that you don't hear from everybody.
Yeah, Daron, and he said it there in the interview, he talked about he won't go more than 4 or 5 years corn on corn. But I will tell you from talking to him in the past, he really, really likes corn. I mean, he just is very passionate about corn. And even if we would recommend that he go to soybeans specific years, because of the commodity price and so on and so forth, he would still gravitate towards corn just because he enjoyed that. But he also knows he has to break that up once in a while.
So for a guy in his position who is, top producer that, like you said, loves growing corn, he's growing narrow row, high population, I would imagine there's probably some differences when you approach corn on corn from that perspective, high population, high density. I mean, what are the things growers have to kind of probably be more in tune to at that level?
Well, what's interesting is, especially in that part of Illinois, typically they get rootworm pressure. He doesn't have any. And so it's of course disease and insect pressure that you worry about going corn on corn. And he has seemed to do a very good job of keeping that at bay. A number of his products just have a glyphosate trait on them. In fact, a few years he was conventional corn. So it's very interesting to see someone like him doing what he's doing, breaking the rules, so to speak.
So, and that's a great point. I mean, there are certain parts of the country where I think it's assumed that, whatever, rootworm is a problem in that area. And maybe it's not as simple as it seems, because even in that area, if you'll have pockets where maybe rootworm pressure isn't that high because of cultural practices or whatever the farmer's doing to kind of maintain that. So I think that's kind of interesting. Also in that interview, he talked a little bit about fungicide application, and I know in the video that we have that accompanies your interview also that we have on our website, there's some footage of some of these drone applicators. Talk a little bit about some of that they did.
Well, so there's two things to take home, or two things to learn from Daron on that part. The number one thing is he made, in some tests, he did 3 applications of fungicide. In those tests, he saw a 15 bushel advantage to doing 3 applications versus 2 applications. Now, what we don't know is, was that timing? Was the third application the one giving him the 15 bushel? So if he would have taken out the first application, would he still have that bushel increase? But nevertheless, we learned that fungicide's a big deal. But the next thing is using the drone. I was really impressed with his test. I was really impressed with how well that worked on his farm. And maybe it's his acreage size, I don't know. but he was a believer, and I guess I'm a believer after looking at the data. And he didn't just do it in one spot. He did it in multiple fields on his farm. And I'm a believer, I guess, as this technology improves, as the drones get larger, that is the way to put fungicide on, at least, or maybe even post-applied herbicides.
Well, and yeah, I think I was taken aback when you think about, even some of the best drones that are out there are, payload capacity, whatever, like you said, 2 gallons or 3 gallons or something. It just doesn't seem like it seems like it would take you a long time to get over those acres. But he seemed to think that they've done the research and certainly not at a disadvantage over other methods, which I think is kind of cool.
And he was, I think he was skeptical of that technology, and now he's a believer.
Very cool. So talking about some of the products that he mentioned in the interview, 9714 is one of our bellwether products, especially among folks who are the high population, high density guys that we work with. It seems like that's a big product for him in his area. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, 9714, 9808, anything that's shorter he loves, and partly because it works well at the populations he's in. But also if he's always had this ambition of wanting to get a sprayer through that field for herbicide application. I knew that was his first, originally when he looked into the whole thing, that's why he wanted shorter corn, was because of the ease of using a ground sprayer versus an aircraft when applying some of these things. Of course, now he's doing drones for fungicide, but that's what he looks for. And over the years, not just 9714 and 9808, I mean, there's been a lot of other shorter statured hybrids we've had that have done well on this farm. But those two definitely stand out. And this year now he's doing MX514, MX709. MX709 is a little bit taller, but those genetics work well in that geography. So
what do you think you'll see with like MX709 that he maybe hasn't seen with 9714 and 9808?
Well, I think the yield will be there. He may not like it because it is a little bit taller.
I noticed, of course, 9808 comes up, and that's such a popular product in our lineup, has been for a long time. And something that struck me was he talked about its consistency and just how consistent it is year in and year out. And I got to thinking, for somebody like Daron, who, is always kind of testing boundaries, I think he said he would adjust the population at times, just to, I think he said, so he doesn't want to leave anything on the table. So he's always playing around with maybe testing the upper end of population here and there. It occurs to me that maybe that's one of the great things about a product like 9808. If you know it's consistent, that's not the variable that you're worried about. So you can plant that and you can play with different other variables and see what brings you a return, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 9808's super versatile. That part of Illinois, that hybrid has just been exceptional for anybody that uses it. I know our reps in that geography, we have one rep that just thinks it's the best thing since sliced bread, and it really is a dominant product, and something Daron can use. He can plant it at any population, just about, and it's not going to be a failure. Yet he can push it and see on his farm, okay, what do I need to be doing here? And you can take 9808 and push it, and you're not going to have a disaster on your hands, and that's what he likes about it.
So for somebody who goes and visits Daron's farm and sees his operation, I mean, what are the things that they're going to be take back with them, thinking about that they might be able to apply on their own operation?
I would tell you, if you just walk his fields and you're in his 15-inch row spacing, and you're counting plants and you're figuring out what the actual populations are out there. Aside from that, Daron does a good job of not having a lot of overhead. He doesn't have a bunch of enormous machine sheds and and all those things. He truly puts his resources into the technology on growing the crop, and does his homework, and he wants to be different. He does things. He is truly a super management corn producer.
Well, it seems to be successful for him, that's for sure. Well, for those who've been listening, we've been listening to Myron Stine and Daron Judd of Judd Farms in Lostant, Illinois, talking about the yield benefits of Stine narrow row corn. Myron, thanks again for joining us today.
Absolutely, David.
That's our time for today, but we'll be back 2 weeks from now with another episode in our Yield Plus Corn Tour series. Next week, Myron is sitting down with grower Bob Manning of Waukee, Iowa, to discuss his experiences with Stine corn. I'd like to thank our guests and listeners for joining us on another episode of the Stine Seedcast. To never miss an episode, subscribe to the Stine Seedcast wherever podcasts are found.
Subscribe to the Stine Seedcast wherever podcasts are found. To learn more about Stine and its elite corn and soybean genetics, visit stineseed.com. Stine has yield.